Hello and welcome to this special. India at 75 is a unique initiative which envisions how India should be in her 75th year of independence and seeks to bring together all stakeholders, including the industry, government institutions, community groups and individuals to make this a reality. First articulated by renowned economist Professor C.K. Prahlad, this is an initiative that has found great support among policymakers and industry stalwarts. Now, among the big targets of India at 75 is the creation of a platform which will allow individuals to give back by volunteering their time and skills. In fact, India at 75 has just completed its third annual volunteering week, and to talk about how this has panned out and how volunteering as a concept can be a game changer for India, we have with us Godrej Group Chairman Adi Godrej, Dr. Mukund Rajan, member of the Group Executive Council and Chief Ethics Officer of the Tata Group, and Navani, Chairman National Committee at India at 75. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Good to be here.
Rajan, I want to start off with you. You know, you've been part of the India at 75 move from the time it was first articulated in 2007. You've come a long way, and increasingly you have realized that individuals are going to make as much of a difference. And I think that's the essence of this whole volunteering concept. 3 years down the line, how successful have you been in that?
Well, I think, you know, at the end of the day, you know, it's the composite sum of all the individuals that is going to make a difference. I think you're absolutely right. And I think we've seen the National Volunteering Week in 3 years gain significant momentum. Year on year, we have seen not only increased participation in terms of numbers, but even the quality of volunteering exercises, the geographic spread of the whole volunteering activity, the kinds of people who are coming in to volunteer. And I think there is so much learning about really what is it that, you know, encourages, incentivizes people to step up. What is it that they benefit and gain out of the whole volunteering exercise. And I think given the audacious goals of what India at 75 is and what India seeks to be in 2022, I don't think it is something that is possible or can happen without a deeper engagement from the people of India. So I think definitely there is a lot of merit in having individuals participate. And I think the National Volunteering Week has, over a period of 3 years, reached out and touched really about 150 million people in India at, you know, different points during these 3 weeks. Yeah.
When you talk about development, Mr. Godrej, and I've been a journalist for a long time, you talk about policymakers who should set the targets and set the policy framework, and industry, which has to be part and parcel. You already talk about the individual. How does this triangle work according to you?
I think it's very important. I think people in India are getting very much more conscious about not just economic development but social development and how they go hand in glove. If social development picks up, I think economic development will pick up, and people are willing to do a lot for it, and volunteering has worked out extremely well. I must tell you, I have a grandson who, when he turned 17 just a few months ago, decided to volunteer for Teach for India.
Wow.
And he was very happy doing it. I think the children he taught got a lot out of it. So I think it motivates people a lot. And more importantly, to my mind, what happens is you get managerial expertise into various fields which can help. So NGOs, social programs, etc., with senior level people volunteering now, very senior people. You get a lot of managerial experience, how to best do it. I think it leads to efficiency, economy in how programs are gone, and people are very proud of it.
You know, this gives this kind of structure to the concept of volunteerism, because, you know, one can argue, Rajan, that in India, given that we have 3.3 million NGOs and a lot of people work over there without you know, great salaries, you know, you could say that that is part of volunteerism. So how is this different? Is it because you're bringing together the best brains and getting them to do focused projects? I mean, how do you see the difference?
So I think, you know, I think the NGO concept is actually, you're absolutely right where it starts. You know, you want to do things for a larger good. But sometimes I think because, like what you rightly said, we have 3.3 million NGOs. Most of them are very small NGOs. Building capacity within the NGOs even to be able to absorb volunteering, you know, is definitely a challenge in India. So I think what really India at 75 is trying to do is trying to create a platform that not only encourages, you know, skilled volunteering to happen, but also encourages, you know, NGOs and others to really see how they can absorb that volunteering capacity, because without that, you know, I don't think we'll be able to create impact, you know, and a meaningful you know, impact on society. So like if you look at the US, right, and that's where India at 75 really started, because that's one developed country that has really done, has exemplified volunteering and its effect extremely well. I think over the last 10 or 13 years, I think over 100 billion hours of volunteering, which translates to about $1 trillion in terms of, if you were to monetize the value of what that
Fair
volunteering has,
Fair
it's a certain percentage of GDP.
Okay, talking about monetizing the value of pro bono work, let me get Mukund in on this conversation. Mukund, you headed the task force that looked at a framework to actually give monetary value to pro bono. What was the thought process behind it, and why this focus on getting a monetary value? Is it because you want to make it a far more formal structure?
I think a couple of reasons, Mini. First of all, the old adage, what gets measured gets improved. So we needed some kind of estimation as to what pro bono effort was actually delivering or yielding. Also in India, as you're aware, in the last couple of years under the new Companies Act, there is a provision that requires companies that meet a size and scale test to contribute 2% of their net profit towards CSR. And we were actually recommending that to the extent that pro bono contributions and volunteering by the corporate sector can actually help many of the non-profits to scale up their capabilities and their activities, it should be counted towards their CSR contribution. And to the extent that they are required to contribute 2% of net profit, you needed a monetary equivalent of that. But the real reason was effectively to really find some kind of measure that could be improved upon with time. So what we came up with was really a model where you could provide a value to people who had certain number of years of experience and were somewhere in the corporate hierarchy, and then ascribe a value to their contribution per hour. I think we were quite modest in our estimation of what contribution people would make through the corporate organization.
This concept of pro bono has come a long way, Mukund, because what has also happened is that now it's included as part of the CSR piece that the company's law enables or puts in place or mandates. That's the word that's used. But how open are companies that when you worked with them, and I know it was jointly done with NGOs and a whole lot of companies, how open are they to something like this, and what was the buy-in that you found?
I think everyone saw this as really a win-win. I think from the perspective of the non-profits, they were really looking for talent, for time from the corporate sector, and really the focus on efficiency which the corporate sector typically tends to have. And for the corporate world, I think there was this desire to really make a significant contribution in supporting the non-profits. So in our task force, we had over 30 members, probably half and half between the corporate world and non-profits. And I think everyone was keen to contribute and add value.
On that note, we head into a short break, but we'll be back with lots more. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching our special. Still with me, Ms. Adi Godrej, Dr. Mukund Rajan and Rajan Navani. Mr. Godrej, this brings the science of corporate, manpower and the skill sets into doing good. And I think that's a very interesting combination because that area has been starved of great talent. Do you see this a coming together of the two, and what are your own targets internally to make this successful?
To my mind, as this increases volunteerism and corporate talent, especially senior corporate talent, goes into the field, whether it's in NGOs or other areas, I think the efficiency of the whole system will improve dramatically. So to my mind, even if you're spending X in terms of volunteering time and value, the results will be 3x, 4x. So I think it's a very good movement, and I think as it goes forward, it will add tremendously to the social upliftment of India.
Fair enough. Let's look at the Godrej Group, Mr. Godrej, and over there I think there are two interesting pieces. One is your support to a campaign like Teach for India, and I know you've been big supporters of it. And the second is the volunteering work that you encourage from within, especially on the skilling side. So how do you see these two pieces, where you're supporting an external organization and encouraging it internally, and what are the lessons for other corporates in this?
So I think both are very important, but I think this volunteering that we are encouraging extremely strongly is working very well in terms of what we are able to do in terms of helping others, but it works very well internally. People who are in this program are very proud of it. Others look up to it. More want to volunteer in future, and I think it will add tremendous value. And we find it people get very motivated with this kind of thing. One would think perhaps because they are being pressured by the company but they want to do so much of it because they find it very self-satisfying and they find people looking up to them.
Mukund, that is a fact, especially when you talk about the younger generation, and every organization is getting younger and younger. Studies show that millennials want to give back to society, and I think there is a big buy-in over there. What's your own experience been within the Tata Group, and what are the programs that have really been successful to get people to volunteer time and skills?
Absolutely, Mini. I think for the younger generation, it's very important to feel reassured that their employer is actually committed to society and to giving back. And I think the volunteering program really reaches out quite intensively to those demographics in India today. So in the Tata Group, we call our volunteering program Tata Engage. We have two flavors of Tata Engage. We have the volunteering weeks, when young people can participate in anything that catches their fashion or fancy. And we have the more structured programs of non-profits that we call Pro Engage, where people work on their personal time over 3 to 6 months. And in both those initiatives, we're finding that the largest number of people volunteering are in fact the younger elements. If you ask me to put an age to it, I'd probably say between 25 and 35. And I think it's at that age that people are very passionate about social causes also, and they believe that they can really contribute something. So we're just tapping into that fervor, that sentiment, that passion that they have.
Where does this fervor translate into benefits for companies? Because one can be a skeptic and argue that you already have a CSR mandate. Now you're going to have your employees going in for volunteering as well. What's the longer term vision?
No, I think it's very important. People respect the company much more when you are encouraging this sort of thing. People respect you when you are doing philanthropy. People respect you when you are doing corporate social responsibility. And I think ultimately we all realize, including the young people who volunteer for this and some very experienced people who volunteer for it, that ultimately it will benefit them, because everything goes much better in the country, everything goes much better in the company, and it's a win-win for all concerned.
Rajan, in the past, the problem with volunteering has been the lack of measuring tools. How do you gauge whether what you have done is going to have an impact? How have you approached that when you look at volunteering?
No, so absolutely. So I think the way we are looking at it from an India at 75, and given that we had a 1.2 billion population and everybody can volunteer in some form or the other. Though Adi talked of his granddaughter and daughter, volunteering, he's also volunteering. Mukund, me, all of us are in some way, volunteering our time for to see and help shape India. So it's the passion, right? I think what Adi rightly said and Mukund said, it's the passion that comes from making sure that there is change on the ground. So I think what we say is you can start with just saying count me in, where you say I want to be counted as somebody who is engaged in nation building in some form of the other. And what we say is, even if you consume less water at home, or you cut little energy consumption or move more to renewable, you are contributing in some way to the nation's development. So beginning from count me in to sparing some time, whatever it can begin with, extending to actually giving 3 to 6 months of your life. The US has a very good program, the US Peace Corps, where they give about 2 years of their life. So we are kind of trying to name that skillanthropy, where we say you bring a particular skill set, you build capacity, you contribute and make a more meaningful impact that is visible. And I think what the National Volunteering Grid as a technology platform is really able to do is to enable those individual contributions to actually get cumulatively put together to see an end result that is visible. So I think in that light we are kind of making.
And Mini, I feel also that the people who do volunteer, it's a great leadership training for them too, because they know that leadership comes not just from a unidirectional approach, but a multi-directional approach. And I think we find they're turning out to be much better leaders.
Mr. Godrej, how do you make projects especially around volunteering, more specific? I mean, for example, you at Godrej, do you have at least some structure drawn in so that employees can, avail of it?
So, for example, one of our big corporate social responsibility endeavors is skilling and training, because I feel that's extremely important for India. I like to think that there's no unemployment in India, only unemployability. So, if you skill and train, it will really add great value to the people and the economy concerned. And it's similar with volunteering, because a lot of our people volunteer in the skilling and training programs, because they are very good at it, they understand it very well, and we do a lot of our skilling and training around our businesses. So, it helps our businesses, it helps business in general, it helps those categories, and it helps the people.
Absolutely. Mukund, I mean, look at the Tata Group. I mean, you're in businesses from steel to cars to, tea and a whole lot in between. How do you approach it?
So, I think the idea of the volunteering weeks was really to give our people their first taste of what it means to actually go out into the community and engage with stakeholders. The Pro-Engage effort, which is the follow-up to the volunteering week, is really where we try and curate the projects for our people. What we don't want is a situation where an uncurated project is offered and people are committing time and spending a fair amount of their personal resource engaging with a non-profit and then not getting value out of it. So, we try and ensure that both from the perspective of the non-profit, their project is actually well curated, well defined, and the outcomes are quite tangible and meaningful, and then those are offered on a voluntary basis to our people, and they have an opportunity to then select. After this is done, we try and then get feedback both from the non-profit on our volunteers and from our volunteers about how the project was actually handled by the non-profit. I think we need to have that conversation and really an effort over time to measure the impact, because that is what will then give subsequent generations of volunteers the confidence that they can work with a particular non-profit.
Time for a short break now, but we'll be back with more. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching our special on volunteering under India at 75. Still with me is Adi Godrej from the Godrej Industries, Mukund Rajan from Tata Sons, and Rajan Navani, the national head of India at 75. Rajan, this is a great initiative, but my question is, how do you make it effective and really impactful? Given the larger national development mandates, where do you think you can plug this in? You can plug it in obviously for NGOs, but can you also plug it in for civic bodies, policy makers on clear projects? Because now technology is driving so much of the innovation out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's really the thinking around this. So even when Prime Minister Modi was visiting Silicon Valley, there was a group of Google engineers of Indian origin who were actually working on apps in a hackathon, with India, and actually created some magnificent solutions, simplistic, which could be deployed back here, for governments to adopt and others to adopt. So I think there is this little structure which is beginning to come in now on where and how this volunteering can actually be plugged in. And CII itself, as an organization, is seeing how a group of companies, and what kind of, impact they are creating. So I think this kind of structured shape to volunteering and pro bono is beginning to, happen. I think the government's initiative of MyGov itself, the mygov.com is a great engagement methodology for people, and India at 75 is deeply engaged with MyGov to see how, additional volunteers can actually even be leveraged through that platform.
Do you see a change, Mr. Godrej? Because I think Nandan going into UID, a lot of Mr. Ramadurai going into national skills development, you supporting India at 75 in such a big way has given a great signal from the top. Do you see buy-in from policymakers?
Yeah.
Are they more open, especially now that the problems are so many? I think they
I
need
think
all
in
the
the past
associations.
also some people have gone, but unfortunately our political system is such that it's not easy for a professional to get into the government, especially at a political level. In the US, you see a lot of it. You see a very successful businessman becoming secretary of this, secretary of that, etc., because their political system allows non-elected politicians
yeah.
to be in the cabinet. Our system makes it rather difficult. But there is a lot, as you say, Nandan has done a fantastic job. And so such top level volunteering, to my mind, also is extremely important.
The other piece is, how do you get retirees or stay-at-home mums to come and contribute? Because I feel there's a huge amount of talent over there waiting to be tapped. And from the women's network point of view, Rajan, I know we've been trying to permeate through that, and it's been very difficult. But volunteering would come naturally to that.
No, absolutely. And I think as we were saying, there are a lot of women who are at home today who really need to come into the workplace, or need maybe are keen to come, but somehow maybe because of they've lost time or they're not able to,
and also can't take full-time jobs necessarily.
Correct. But even if they can, maybe stepping out with volunteering to begin with, because volunteering also gives you that the self-esteem, the confidence, the networks that you need to kind of make that initiative. Because I think eventually larger number of women coming into the workplace will only help the economy and many other aspects. So I
also
definitely
retirees, right?
think
I mean,
Yes.
in the
Absolutely.
whole lot of, from the Godrej point of view, tapping into people
And
who've
with
been with
today's
you.
health standard, 60 years is too young an age to retire.
Absolutely, absolutely. Mukund, how can you take this to the next level? This is a great movement, and I think there is a buy-in, and all the waves are coming together to create a larger wave. But how do you really capitalize on this and take it to the next level? Since you work very closely with various stakeholders, what comes to your mind?
So I think one of the points that you mentioned, Mini, just now on involving more people, we've actually tried to do the same thing with families and with our retired employees. The one issue we've run up against is the fact that some of them don't have access to our intranet, which is a confidential internal network. And therefore the curated projects we sometimes find it difficult to put out. But that's where I think India at 75 can play a big role in getting much of corporate India to participate and get their extended ecosystem, including families, friends, retired employees, to participate. The other issue is, I think, what we discussed around valuation of contribution. I think the more that corporates see the real value that they're generating and the impact they're creating, and the more that actually funnels into the government's expectations and CSR contribution, I think you will see many more corporates stepping up to the opportunity.
Mr. Godrej, how do you take this to the next level? What's the role of industry in getting volunteerism going, and what's the role of policymakers? How can you get all three together?
I think we should, first of all, we should get the dimensions of it better and better. And as you say, once we've found a way of how to do it, get people from, not just from the companies, but also from outside, as you mentioned, women at home, retired people, etc. So there's tremendous opportunity to scale it up very considerably and ultimately be a major force in terms of the time and skills that are brought into social development of the country. Because with economic development, we have to look to very strong social development in our country.
And capacity building for
Absolutely.
existing
Absolutely.
organizations,
Absolutely.
which becomes a big challenge. Raj, I'll let you have the last word. In a situation like this, you've said, and one of the things that India 75 has put forward is that we should have a national volunteering week, which a formal declaration of it. Why do you say that? And what is your lesson from 3 years? What would you like to see from here?
Well, I think, I think the government declaring a national volunteering day or a week, I think is something that would definitely go a long way. But I think given the fact that as Indians, seva, etc. is there within us. It just needs to be unleashed, it just needs to be structured. Certain themes like the government has put up, like Swachh Bharat, is a great theme which aligns people who really believe in that to come around that and then break it up into smaller projects, and that can start at a national level, city level, corporate level, across the board. But yeah, definitely I think at the end of the day, I'd like to look at it in two ways. One is, the larger numbers that come in, so while we have the quantity, but also the deeper impact. So, really take this movement to a level where people are really proud. Not only it will bring patriotism back, but I think it will also bring that element of, helping play your little role in shaping the future
And how
of India.
crucial are corporates to this? Because, while a handful of corporates are doing some great work, a large part of India is still looking at bottom lines and EBITDA margins and not wanting to do anything beyond that.
I think many corporates will come on board because corporates are finding that it's very good for their business too. And I do hope at some stage we get really good volunteers to be recognized as we did freedom fighters during the independence movement.
Oh, that's a great thought. That's a great thought. Absolutely.
To get freedom, they had to die. Now they have to live and do a little good. So it's much easier asked.
I know. Mukund, Mr. Godrej and Rajan, thanks so much for joining me on this show. And let's hope we've inspired a lot of people out there watching the show to volunteer. I know I'm going to. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.